Okay. Well, today we're going to be talking about how to regain focus and a little bit of breathing techniques. And I'm Carol, and I work at the Orem office full time. I do some of the workshops and educationals as I'm a CFLE. I love doing family work and certified family life educator as a CFLE. So, and I'm certified in integrated medicine providing for mental health. And of course, I'm a licensed clinician. So, and this is a topic that has kind of baffled a lot of people, especially in the last little year or two. So how do we regain focus? Because one of the biggest complaints right now overall is foggy brain and losing focus. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that. This is going to be mainly kind of taken from the Stolen Focus, Johann Hari. I'm going to go through that in a little bit here. So this is a book that I had on order, that I pre-ordered, that I waited for. I really like his work. I have several of his books. He's English he's a journalist, so he's not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or any of that, but he's a collecting data guy. He likes to collect information and then put it out there. So one of my other favorite books is called Lost Connections from him. So that's how I got turned on by his work. So with that said, we're going to review stats a little bit. America's stats, defining focus and mindfulness. We're going to go through reasons for loss of focus. Okay. And that's what he goes through. That's what this big thick book does, is like, okay, here's some reasons why we have lost focus. And how do we regulate our attention? And then how do we do some breathing exercises that's scientific? Our breathing is very scientific, and so is sleep. So those two go hand in hand to me. And then tools and resources, we're going to go over some of those things. So, let's start with some of these. There's just quite a few things going on here, and of course we don't have this last year's data, or maybe even 2 years. So it takes so long to get that data out. But like, for instance, of course, students switch tasks once every 65 minutes. So we think about that and we go, okay, am I normal? Am I losing focus for a reason? Do I have ADHD? Why can't I just stick with a task? Okay. And that tells us right now every 65 seconds, while adults in offices tend to remain focused on one thing for just 3 minutes. So are we normalizing focus or disfocus? Or are we falling out of practice of this? I don't know, but it has changed, right? 3 million adults have a diagnosis of ADHD using medication, and as high as 30% of boys have a diagnosis of ADHD by the age of 18. So that is this. The United States has soared by 43% overall and by 55% among girls. And it has now reached the point of 13% of adolescents in the US have been given a diagnosis. And then the majority are on stimulant medication drugs. So, and then a recent study and a survey of 300 American workers, about 40% say they feel less productive than usual during the pandemic. That I've seen higher, way higher in other research studies that are coming out. So as we get real research done, we'll see, I've seen it up to 90% of people, their number one complaint right now is focus. So it's like, oh, 90% of people are complaining about focus. So it's a thing. I don't know, if you have family members or if you're here to like, okay, how do we regain focus? There is a science to it, and I've studied it quite a bit in the last several months, and it's quite interesting. So what is focus and mindfulness? The center of clear interest of an activity, or what draws us to the attention to a point of focus. So maintaining a complete or completing an object of a goal, an object of a goal. So object of goal or a goal. So reducing stress and increasing productivity is the key. And then staying present. So focus is in the present, but it also can be, focusing on the past or the future can happen too. But mindfulness, focus, and then mindfulness, staying in the present. We're definitely going to go over mindfulness today. And so there's a lot going on there of how to stay focused, but then defining it is controversial. Mindfulness, not so much. We can define mindfulness. That's been around a long, long time. Jon Kabat-Zinn is the I guess he's the head of research of this of the last 40 years. And so I did do a workshop called Getting Through Depression Mindfully, and I talk all about one of his books there. But it's basically you're just bringing your presence to the moment, and there's no judgment on your thoughts. So it's judging thoughts is not being mindful. So it's not just judgment, it's judging your thoughts. And so initially paying attention, to everything that you experience, and you really initially pay attention to the experience and the feeling and the awareness. But it's just actually being in the present. It's not an additive meditation or anything like that. It's just being in the present. So with me so far on that? So he talks about it's not a mental trick. It's just, existing. So, and you can find lots more on that. In my anxiety program that I teach, week 3 is all about mindfulness, and we do mindful eating, and we, do an exercise on that. So that's an example of that: mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful body scan, mindful, just kind of being in flow. So let's talk about the problems of why we have lost focus, so we can kind of pinpoint some issues here. Now, I only took, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8 of the examples out of Still in Focus. So this was quite interesting. I don't know, you might find this interesting. I don't know if you will, but there was a couple of these that I really found interesting, especially the collapse of reading. We just don't read as much as in America as we used to. But let's start with crippling flow states. So if you've heard of flow, flow is something that we do with great passion and meaningful, I guess, a meaningful goal. So sports, right? So when people are in flow and they are, performing, they are in a very high level of flow. Okay. So swimming, sports, painting, reading, gardening, all those things can be in flow. And so when you're trying to get to an end goal, but you're pushing the limits to the max, of like, with your body for sports. He talks about snowboarders, or I think of the Olympics. I think when I was doing this a while back, doing the PowerPoint, I was like, the Olympics are like, oh, it's just amazing, the snowboarders and the skier, it blows my mind, right? but how do they stay in flow in that sport? Okay. So that crippling. So that's a problem when we aren't in flow. And so the opposite, is crippling flow. So think about what that looks like. And this is chapter 2 of the book, and it just goes into, basically, no stranger is going to flood you with hearts and tell you you're doing great. So I'm just going to throw that. So what happens is, let me explain. He quit using his cell phone. And this is what this, he in the first chapter and the second chapter, he talks about what flow meant to him and being without his cell phone too, and being lost in the, in a big city, basically physically lost, he says, I realized I had for 20 years now have been sending out the receiving signals with a large number of people all throughout the day, text, Facebook, messaging, phone calls. They were all little ways of connecting with the world, basically, right? And I see you, I hear you, I need you, signal back, signal more. Now signal, now all the signals were gone. So he gave up his smartphone, okay, for a while for this experiment and to see how he would do. And so basically when he gave this up, now the signals were gone and it felt like the world was saying, you don't matter. So he said, no stranger is going to flood you with hearts and tell you that you're great. So that's part of chapter 2 in this crippling flow. So it's very interesting. And so what happens is, wait a minute, if we got rid of all of our cell phones or our smartphones, would we have more focus? We would definitely be in more flow, is the point there too. Okay. Let's go on to mental and physical exhaustion. So this is where we go into burnout, right? There's lots of that going on. And how do we, get to a point where we can pull ourselves out of burnout? Now that's a whole other hour I could, talk about. So mental and physical exhaustion. When we are in the back of the brain in a burnout state, so there's chronic, there's habitual, there's 5 levels of burnout that I talk about in another workshop, but here's, the levels of burnout. But the biggest one on here is sleep reduction. So, and he talks about intentional blinks. So there is a science to how many times we blink. He talks about all that kind of stuff. So this goes in deeper. I'm going to try to stay a little surfacey because, it's a 50-minute workshop that, we can't go into everything. But so just the basics of think about your mental and physical exhaustion. When we don't sleep, okay, we have way less ability to stay focused. So 18 hours of being awake, we have a 0.05 reaction of alcoholism. So 0.05 is our DUI rate in Utah. So what does that mean? It means that when we are sleep deprived, we're really going to have less ability to make decisions and to react and to, stay focused. So if you want more on sleep, Why We Sleep is a book that I did a workshop on, and it's on YouTube as we speak. So on our Blomquist Health channel. So go to there if you want to watch that about sleep. It's super number one. The biggest thing out of anything that we want to do, if you change one thing to improve everything else, it's sleep. Okay. So this is the other surprising collapse of focus is sustained reading. So for example, 57% of Americans now do not read a single book in a typical year. Okay. Does that surprise you? Does that freak you out? Does that, doesn't surprise me too much. So meaning Does that mean a single, like listening to a book? Yes. Getting a hard copy of a book and going through it? Yes. So the collapse of sustained reading. So between 2004 and 2017, the proportion of men reading for pleasure had fallen by 40%, while for women it was only 29% down. So reading for pleasure, of course, 40% men, 29% women over those years. And so, and then I, talk about, so the portion of Americans who have never read a book in any given year tripled between 1978 and 2014. We got smart devices. We can listen to books. We can read books. We can look at it that way. But this is in that whole category of reading a book. So whether it's on your smart device or not. So let's see. So the average American spent 17 minutes a day reading a book and 5.4 hours on their phone. So we went from reading a book from, average 17 minutes to 5.4 hours on their phone. So you can see, and this is not a workshop about phones or not phones or technology, but the next part is the rise of technology that has manipulated us, is what he called it. Okay. So let's see, any more on that? Any questions or comments on these so far? So the example of that is The Social Dilemma. If you want to get into that, watch that on I think it's on Netflix. But so basically the rise of technology that he calls manipulated us. He has part 1 on this and then part 2. He says he told me a digital detox is not the solution, So this was, he was talking to James Williams, but he told him this: detoxing is not the solution. So this is why. This is interesting. For the same reason that wearing a gas mask for 2 days a week outside isn't the answer for pollution. So your gas mask is not the solution for pollution. And your solution to focusing is not to detox the technology, right? In learning what dopamine does on the brain, which is connected to technology, also all kinds of dependent and addictive behaviors, you have to understand what dopamine is. Okay, so what we want to do is maintain and manage dopamine, and so that's number 1 in my other workshops and in the Huberman lab, and I have that reference at the back of this, is to take a break. It might be for a short period of time, the levels, but the point is to take breaks. So how to regain focus is along those lines too. And also in a relationship, when you're fighting anything, taking a break shows more, being more productive than anything else. It's just taking a break. So can you take a break from technology for 4 days? Absolutely. Gaming, yes. We want to take a break from electricity so we can get our circadian rhythm back on. So back to sleep, things like that. So let's go to stress response. This one's like, yeah. He found that the more stress response that we have and how we deal with stress is very vital. So these are just some of the reasons why we've, gotten our focus messed up or stolen. So environment trauma, financial crisis, illness, and court and unsafety, that's some of the top reasons, right? So think about environment, trauma, work on trauma in mental health, and financial crisis, illness. So unsafety Okay, of course, anytime we go into unsafety, we go into stress response, which is our fight, flight, or freeze. And when you are in the back of the brain and not in your frontal lobes, this is where, and I could go into this for days, this is where we self-talk. This is where we focus. This is where we focus and process. And we have rewards and reasoning, and where we, make sense of things and put our wise mind together in logic and emotion. So in stress response, we're not in the front lobes. And also in burnout, and also in exhaustion, and also in, lots of things. So in strong, mental health issues, we're in PTSD, any of that kind of stuff is in the back of the brain. So in the midbrain, we stay there and we don't focus, we don't self-talk. So that's the issue with stress response is, when we go 0 to 10, right? And we're in survival, which is unsafety. Okay. So another big, huge one is coming up in research a ton is diet, pollution, toxins, GMO. I mean, all kinds of stuff. When I get certified in integrated medicine for mental health, we talk all about this a lot of how this is connected to mental health and how it's connected to our focus. I mean, it's just there. So there's 70% of kids who cut out preservatives and dyes improve preservatives and dyes, if you didn't catch that. So red dyes improve their ability to pay attention. And the average improvement was remarkable of 50% and above. That's one. He talks about several studies. That one was the elimination diet study. And there's been several that's repeated that. And then there's been some that are, like repeated and is like, okay, more than half in a different study had dramatic changes in their focus. So eliminating certain things, the elimination diet study, okay? And what it is preservatives and dyes. So there's lots of things on grains and omegas. So omega-3s, when we don't have enough omega-3s, that's what runs our brain, and our good fats. Then our brain will suffer. We know that there is tons of studies on omega-3s and magnesium, those two together on mental health and focus. So, and there's I have several supplements that we use for focus in general. So, okay. So there's just a little bit. This is just a little bit of just touching on a few things here. And then the response to the rise of ADHD. So that's controversial. This is very controversial. He talks about, nature versus nurture in ADHD and what the studies are showing. It's very controversial. He interviewed all kinds of people on both sides, right? So this is why ADHD happens, and this is why ADHD happens, and how we, switched it over from ADD to just a kind of like a spectrum, like autism of ADHD, of like, are you hyper focused? Are you not hyper focused, or hyperactivity? So it's there. So, but it has increased. Like I said, 13% adolescents now have a diagnosis of ADHD. So, okay. Anything on that? Anybody have a comment or a chat or anything else? Before you forget, you can go ahead and just chat it. We'll answer it later. I'll look at the chat and check in. So, so go ahead and add anything to the chat if you want to. And you can do it directly to me if you want to, and then I'll read it at the end. And I'm BH webinar host. So, by the way, you can always do it privately to me, and then I'll just ask it at the end or in the middle or wherever. So let's just take a break then. So can you share some of the supplements for omega-3s and magnesium? Yes. So basically what I tell people is you do the research and you read, okay? There is a difference in those two. Some of the other ones doesn't make a difference. In omega-3s, you want particular omega-3s, and I'm not going to give you a brand or anything because I don't have one, honestly. I know that there is some sold in certain stores that are not what you want. That's all I'm going to say. So you have to do the research on that. But omega-3s they do make a difference in what kind of fish oil you're getting, right? And you want to make sure it's pure and the right kind. Now, magnesium, the only thing you need to know about that is you want it separate. I always do omega-3 separate from a regular multivitamin too, because you never will get enough. Magnesium is always separate because the two types that are the most absorbent for your nervous system. So here's omega-3, your brain health. You have to have good fats. That's for your brain. Magnesium's for your nervous system. For example, all your vitamin B or B complex is for your energy and a whole bunch of things too. And then vitamin D3, which is not a vitamin, it's a hormone, is for your mood, which is only one thing out of 100 that it helps run. But magnesium is, to me, in studies, the mother lode of all of it. Okay. So magnesium's taken at night. You can take one in the morning, one at night too, but you take magnesium separate, and it's glycinate or citrate is the most absorbent kind of magnesium. And that's the best for sleep. It's the best for everything else, really. And so it's not really a brand, it's the kind. So just look for that kind. If you order them from Amazon, okay, great. Just look at the 5 stars, look at the brand, look at what the reviews are on that, and then read about it. And then what supplements. So the supplements that help with focus is L-tyrosine. So that's an amino acid, L-tyrosine. And I can, at the end of this, I can send you a link, or I have a couple lists. I have a whole bunch of lists in the sleep workshop. If you click on that in the YouTube channel, the sleep one has anxiety and sleep supplements, and all these are listed in there too. I don't even know if I listed some of these in this workshop. Don't think I did. So L-tyrosine is one for focus. It's specifically for the brain and focus. And a lot of people have really good results with that taken in the morning. Also 5-HTP, but check with your doctor on that one, of course, with any of these. But so 5-HTP, 5-HT is in an antidepressant and anti-anxiety. So you can take 5-HTP over the counter, and that actually helps you stay focused, and then it helps you stay asleep. So 5-HTP is help with that. GABA helps with anxiety and helping you go to sleep, and then 5-HTP helps you stay asleep. So those are neurotransmitters: L-tyrosine, GABA, GABA, and 5-HTP are all neurotransmitters, amino acids. So yeah. Okay, so here's the burnout part. So we talked a little bit about burnout. It's needed to go over a little bit in this focus thing, because if we're in burnout, and we're not doing this as a loaded slide, I know most of my slides are, and I know I go fast, but there's lots of information. That's why you can watch them again. You'll get this PowerPoint. If you signed up for this later, we'll send it out to you. And if you don't, email me and I'll send it right to you today, right now. Irritability, right? Are you going to be focused when you're irritable? No, you're going to be in fight, flight, or freeze. Stuffing, freeze. Overwhelming, fight or freeze. Emotional numbness, freeze. Depression, anxiety, fight. Fatigue, burnout, freeze. Seriously. So you're just going to pick one of the F's, right? You're going to be flooded. That's all of them together. And you're going to be so emotionally overloaded that you're sensitive to, you're just hypersensitive. And that's overloaded. So your senses are overloaded. So those are all going to go into burnout, right? And thinking errors and shame. And so that leads to, if it's chronic, then it goes into chronic burnout, and then habitual burnout is a long period of time that you're stuck in it. And I feel like we're hitting some of that because we're in a 2-year burnout situation, right? So habitual is 2 years plus about, so if we're in a burnout situation, then we're not balanced. So you can think of so that's why I made these my favorite P words. I have lots of favorite, words, but so if we're pretending it's gonna, we're not being physical. So if we're being possessive or, we're not going to have much passion in things, or if we're in perfectionism, then we need to turn to imperfection. If, we're in panic all the time, we're not pacing ourselves. So those are just some examples. So if we're in protective mode and we're protected, we're not playing, we're not having, creativity in our life. So in order to switch over, we want to connect with the hurt that's not hurt, right? So we want to connect with the unharmed. And we still need to connect with the hurt, but then we need to connect with the unhurt, the unharmed part of us. And we need to attune to that. Attunement is a parenting skill and a Dan Siegel term to attunement. And we need to release shame, and then we need to find power. And the way to get out of burnout is finding power in other ways and get grounded and balanced. And of course, we can do that by breathing, and we can do that by a lot of things and self-soothing. So, I'm going to give you some of those examples, but the point is this physical, mental, social, emotional, spiritual. So we go, okay, where's our spiritual and emotional balance? How we're grounded, how we're connected, how we're emotionally intelligent. Those go together. And then here's sleep, diet, and exercise. Like I said before, if we don't have sleep, diet, and exercise on board, we're not going to get to the rest. Number one, sleep. We're not going to get to brain power and tasks and judgment, mental help, right? Which is the focus. What we're talking about here is focus, which is in the mental balance. And so social, okay, are you going to be socially balanced if you're not mentally and physically balanced? Heavens no, you're not. We're not going to have community. We're not going to want to go volunteer, because we're not grounded and connected. So it's a cycle and it goes around, and they all build on each other, but we have to start somewhere and get balanced. And I'm always about inside out first, of course, sleep, diet, and exercise first. It's the best we can, so we can have room for the rest. So how do we unlearn the looping patterns? So we're going to talk about this. So, it's like, wait, we're talking about focus here, right? Well, if we're looping in thinking errors, we're not focused we're not present, we're not mindful. So if we're looping in the nervous system, in our fascia, in our gut, literally, that happens. That's where it happens too. So we have to turn off autopilot. Now, with that said, how do we turn off autopilot? Autopilot keeps us alive literally every day. Because if we had to, for example, let's think of what you would have to have done this morning until now if you didn't have autopilot, down to, getting dressed, having a shower, brushing your teeth, putting the keys in your car and turning it on. It would be very exhausting if we didn't have autopilot. But with that said, turning it off when we need to. So we use it when it's just automatic. But what that's doing is we have so many things that are so automatic. We have turned, if you will, into robots, right? It's just automatic. We have no feeling. We have no presence. We're not sitting in our emotion. We're numb. We're in burnout. We're not mindfully eating, which is, I always talk about mindful eating because, I shove a donut down, I joke about donuts all the time and make fun of myself. I could shove a donut down and not even think about it in 2 seconds. I didn't mindfully eat the donut. I just, inhaled it. So so just think of one thing, if you have pen and paper, as I'm going, through this and so fast, that one thing that you want to turn off. you want to turn off autopilot on. So eating in front of the TV, that's autopilot. That is one of the, a really bad habit that you could break by mindfully eating and saying, okay, I'm not going to do anything else and I'm not going to multitask. And when I'm eating, you're going to eat less, you're going to feel better, you're going to actually, your food's going to digest, you're going to lose weight. Actually, you don't gain weight when you mindfully eat. You have awareness, you're in the present, things like that, where you just turn off. And the other one I'm going to go through later that's autopilot is called ANTS. It's automatic negative thoughts. We want to turn those off. And that takes a little bit of work, by the way, because your neural pathways, what you fire, right? Wires together. You've heard that, what fires wires. So when you fire something, it's autopilot looping. You fire it and it wires together after a period of time. So it's just automatically wired. We want to unwire those bad habits of looping. Okay, facing it instead of faking it, my favorite thing. Breathing, not force, just only this moment, right? Just breathe. Body scans, body massage, yoga, those kind of things, anything body. How to transform focus is getting in the body. We have to get in tune and grounded in the body first. Okay. Then we can clean up our environment. So I have these examples. I put these in several workshops of the 9 basic examples of cleaning up your environment. So you pick one again, just like your balance. Here's your balance, but here's your environments of those balances: relationship, home, your financial, your nature, spiritual, yourself, your physical, emotional. So something to do with self, more like I would just put the soul in the middle of that, because that's your body, mind, and spirit. So you put your soul in the middle and say, okay, where do I need to clean up my environment? Literally, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever that looks like, but literally cleaning it up is an intervention I teach in therapy all the time. So for an example of that is taking 10 minutes and cleaning something out. It's a drawer, it's a shelf, it's weeds, it's cleaning your car. It's one of my favorite reward systems. I know I'm weird. I schedule and clean my car. I like my car. I like it clean. That makes me happy. It's my reward system. So meaning I put my time, energy, money into that reward, and I clean up my environment. Because unlimited car wash, so I can go whenever I want, and that's my reward. So it's just kind of therapeutic, right? So picking something in your environment, and then the key is timing it, setting a timer for 10 minutes. It's not doing 2 hours of laundry. It's not cleaning out the whole closet. It's just cleaning up an environment for a reason, to help you clear space for other things and make, there's nothing better sometimes than opening a door or a drawer and it's organized, right? It's like, well, how did that help focus? It's training your brain. It's not about the shelf, or it's not about the closet. It's training your focus to say, this is what I'm doing for 10 minutes. Okay. Does that make sense? And clearing your trauma, I could talk on that for an hour. Clearing your trauma is a whole different thing. So, but clearing your trauma, that's a deep one. Like, how do you clear trauma, right? Well, I'm a trauma EMDR trained, focused therapist. So I do a lot of clearing of trauma. So, okay. So here's focus and here's thoughts, right? Lots of connection there. So why we observe our thoughts, okay? And you can go into thinking errors workshop later too, but let's just observe thoughts for a minute. So what are you noticing right now of your thoughts? Yeah, you can be kind to me of your thoughts of this PowerPoint that we've recorded again. So let's just go back to that slide for a minute while we have a question on that slide, that last one. So where can I find the 9 examples of clearing your environment? Is basically these 9. I don't know if you can see my PowerPoint, whoever just put that question out there. How can I find the 9 examples? So these are just examples of the 9 areas, right? So if I was to clean up my environment in financial, what would I do? I would set a schedule for paying my bills, and I would spend 10 minutes organizing my bills and setting aside my financial plan for the week. Doing a budget for 10 minutes weekly, setting aside the bills, the cash for this. That would be cleaning up your environment in a financial situation. So the other one I gave the example of like cleaning out a drawer, right? It's just setting a 10-minute limit and saying, okay, I'm going to work on this for 10 minutes and then stop. So nature, I pull weeds, lots of them, because I have 2 big gardens. So you clean up the environment. Does that help me focus and help me focus on other things so I can focus on this, and this? Absolutely. It's actually therapeutic, but it's also an intervention of focus. So spiritual focus, relationships, home, wherever you think that your environment needs to be cleaned up, you pick one of these. Okay, get out of autopilot a little bit too. Does that make sense in that question? Just cleaning up your environment in the 9 environments. So just pick something. If it's in your home, then you would pick a drawer. I tell people to do that at least every single day, if not twice a day. You pick a 10-minute cleanup, and do a drawer and do 10 minutes of laundry, do 10 minutes of dishes, do 10 minutes of this. And then you can focus on making dinner, right? If you're cleaning up your physical diet, then what are you going to focus on? Doing your 10-minute grocery list every week and going to the store, right? So it really does transform focus. Plus it just feels good and it's accomplishing, and all those things that come later with the reward system. Okay. So back to this observing our thoughts. Observing thoughts provides distance from them, okay, from the outside. Even if we wrote down our thoughts or wrote them down here on a whiteboard, those are all very helpful to do. So observing your thoughts, but writing them down. They reveal to us what they are, temporary sensations of mind coming and going. Even if the thought keeps coming back into mind, it is still temporary. So we observe our thoughts and then we say, okay, there they are. That's a feeling, that's a temporary thought, that's a whatever. They usually don't stay around too long unless we go into overgeneralization and thinking errors and jumping to conclusions and all the thinking errors that come from those thoughts. So we're just observing, right? We want to observe our thoughts. Observing thoughts is a path to freedom. We just have to start with observing first. We always want to observe the emotion, the thoughts, and then stop and go, oh, okay. And we can go into the other, I get coping skills after that. If we're looping and we're going into thinking errors, then we can just notice that and we observe that. And then later we can go into, reactive problems just to help the problematic behavior if it's a problem. Okay. So let's hurry and get to some breathing here. So practicing, noticing the words. The goal is not to mind dump everything. It's not to empty your thoughts. It's mindfulness is just to be in it. So once again, sleep, then we can focus better during the day. But the point is radical accepting our thoughts, no judgment, and just sitting in the present with them. Because once we go future and past, future, we have now gone outside of mindfulness and we go into extreme, non-focus, so behavior. So these are just, I'm going to teach you Foursquare breathing here in a minute. I'm going to teach you focus point right now. So here's some coping skills. This is how we want to bring back our focus. There is scientific, neurological ways to do coping mechanisms to get yourself back into the present. There is distractions. So once again, clean up your desk. When you need a distraction for 10 minutes, take a break. I teach people to walk to the bathroom and back. It's not to go to the bathroom. So eating mindfully, imagery, body scan, breathing. So these are just some examples. There's lots and lots. There's freemindfulness.org that you can download some mindful guided imageries and stuff like that. But so let's teach you focus point, Foursquare breathing, stuff like that, that can bring you back to the present, into focus. We have to, if you're an adolescent and you're, what was the statistic that we have, like how many seconds that we stay on something? Teenagers can focus on one task for only 65 seconds at a time, and office workers are averaging 3 minutes at a time. Yeah, so this is focus point. This is just one thing that you can do anywhere, pretty much anywhere you can, anywhere. You don't have to use a pen, but you use your finger. But all this is you're going to do this for several minutes, but you're going to hold a pen 6 inches away from your face, or about a foot, so anywhere in between here. And so you're going to focus on the point of the pen, and then you're going to focus on the wall. Then you're going to, for 3 seconds, and then bring it back to the pen, to the point, and then to the wall. And I renamed this focus point just so it's easy for kids and other people and us. So it's like, here's the focus, and then there's the focus, and then here's the focus, and here's the focus. Now I usually do bilateral focus, but this is just one that you can do that, okay? It draws focus. It's an eye thing. It's it helps your nervous system to calm, along with other senses that you're going to add to it if you want. Okay. So just look at that slide. As I said, if you want this PowerPoint before a couple days before we send it out again, then just email me and I'll send it to you right now today. But so here's a breathing practice. I'm not going to take the time to go through it, but this is just an example. I put a YouTube one up there just randomly, like I felt like it was an okay one. This one's like 10 minutes that you can watch and do, or this one is a written out, practice your deep breathing for a few minutes, place your hand on your belly, just the same basic deep breathing, imagining your air going in and out, washing away tension, anxiety. You can wash away anything you want here. So add an imagery to it. I like to add light coming in. So you can imagine light coming in and going through the breath and going through the body and back out, anything like that. Okay. This is the flow state meditations that you can start that get you into flow, right? This is a demonstration of, I'm just giving you examples here of like coping and how to use different ways that work for you in breathing to cause your breath to come back into present. So I'm sure you've seen this example of using your hand to go in and out and going up and down the fingers, and get the pointer finger of your other hand ready to trace your fingers up and down, slide each finger slowly. So that's a really easy one for kiddos and anybody, because once you're looking and you're using 5 senses, plus you're focusing on a shape, it's just going to be one more thing that helps you be present. And the next one is the pace breathing, and then the Foursquare breathing. Foursquare breathing I teach the most. Okay, so this one you can either use your fingers and go count up 4, right, and then count down 4. So it's just a really easy way to logically, because anytime you're counting and and paying attention to that, you're going into the left side of the brain that is logic, which is your reasonable brain. Emotions is the right side. Now, with that said, let me remind you of a little really quick, fun technique here. So when you're doing this pace breathing, add this to it. If you want to calm down your emotions, so if your emotions, your frontal lobe is your right brain, okay? That's where your emotions come. Then we want to, if we want to open your emotions, you close this side. If you want to open the logical side, which you do if you're in an emotional state, you want to close your emotional brain. You want to close this nostril and breathe this way, and it will open up. It causes you to go into your logical brain. That's the one that I want you to do at night, because we want to get into our logical brain. Oh, wait, no, I'm thinking too much. Okay. If you're a thinker, then go into your emotional brain and go into soft, calm emotions and get out of your logical brain. So I don't want you counting. I don't want you counting at night. You see, I don't want you doing logical thinking at night, because that's usually where people go, oh, I don't want to be logical. I start thinking about everything I have to do tomorrow at work at night, and you're not focused at all and on the present. So force breathing, use that when you're in the middle of the day, when you need to focus on a test, when you want to get logical. So you're going to go up 4, hold it for 4, let it out for 4, wait 4, do it 4 times. And it actually changes your blood pressure and your most likely and your heart rate. So that's a very fast way, doing it 4 times to get your breathing under control. So this is the other, the ones that the real one that I'm going to skip over here, but basically you're going to do that for square breathing or pace breathing or mindful eating, anything, and you're going to rate it. Okay. So once again, you're getting logical. So rating it is 1 to 10. Your set is just your level. Okay. So 10 is a strong emotion or a strong anxiety or a strong thing. And so, if you're 5, you're still in the middle, right? But once we get to a 7 or 8 plus, anywhere from 8 to 10, we're not self-talking as much. Okay. So this is really hard to do when you're at a 10. You're not going to be doing any of this stuff when you're at a 10. Okay. So if you're so unfocused and, in severe anger, say in rage, you're not going to stop and say, oh, okay, let me check my stud. I'm at a 10. I'm going to count down. I'm going to do my force for breathing. I'm going to get focused now, and I'm going to listen to my breath. So do you see what I'm saying? I'm being sarcastic, but this is not about that. So you have to understand that when you're to 5 and you can do, focus point, or you can, talk to a friend, or you can focus on something, you're self-talking still in the frontal lobes. That makes sense. So tools and reminders, let's wrap it up, and you can send me your texts and your chats, while we're wrapping this up. Sleep is essential for focus. We all got that, right? Extended time away from technology is key. Extended time. Go away without service or electricity if you want to get back on circadian rhythm. That's one key there. If you are on circadian rhythm, go away from technology and have some time away from that too. I don't condone taking away teenagers' phones for discipline. I don't condone taking away kids' phones for discipline. We can limit them, and we can have very, very good limits. And I do condone totally taking away the kids' phones at night, because we have to have 1 hour of no blue light so we can actually kick in our own melatonin. We have to have 1 hour of no light. especially blue light. So that's our phones, right? Okay. So 60 minutes or less of phone use a day. Okay, that's what he talks about. This whole book is very thick, but so 60 minutes or less statistically. Nobody does that right now. I'm pretty sure, and if you do, you're rare and, it's difficult. So embracing mind wandering. So how do you embrace it? That's called radical acceptance. We embrace that our mind wanders and it's okay. Mindfulness is not wiping our thoughts or it's just not judging them. So meaning embrace it. Embrace that you're mind wandering. Embrace daydreaming. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's like, oh, we're supposed to be so focused and you're supposed to pay attention in class. Well, you know what? I think we all made it after we daydreamed in class. I think so. So omega-3. So back to that omega-3, DHA. Oh, I did put L-tyrosine on here. So DHA, omega-3, 300 mix, and then L-tyrosine every day, or for 2 weeks and try it and see how you feel. And then you stop. That's what Huberman Labs, he recommends that of doing L-tyrosine and then stopping so our dopamine levels stay balanced. So yeah, those are 2 brain focus. Those are for the brain to help the brain have nourishment. But the biggest thing is when we sleep, our brain shrinks 20%. So if in one night, every night with REM sleep. So we've got to shrink our brain every night too. So with sleep. So don't listen to your ants. That's the automatic negative thoughts. So we've got to think about those. Train your mind. So that's a 10-minute distraction that you can go clean out something. Train your mind to be focused on that one thing and then stop. Meditation, breathing exercises. We did that. Take breaks. Talked about that. Don't multitask. Just don't. Now, if I'm doing the dishes and I'm listening to a book on Audible, which I always do all the time, that's not multitasking. It's a 5 senses. It's a distraction. It's good, but it's not a multitask. So don't get multitasking. Don't get hung up on that too much. But if you're talking to someone and you're sending an email to someone at the same time, if you're on the phone with somebody and then you're sending an email, that's multitasking. That really screws up our focus. So stay balanced and play, connected, creativity, go outside, nature. Okay, so if you need to go, you can go. If you have questions, you can ask questions, and I'll stop the recording here in a minute and we can go from there. But here is some references. I talk about Body Keeps the Score. Jon Kabat-Zinn is this mindful way through depression. Lost Connections and Stolen Focus. That's Johann Hari. His latest book in Stolen Focus and Lost Connections, 2018. Altered Traits talks a lot about this, of meditation changing our brain and body and mind. That's literally the book. Okay. Goleman is Altered Traits. It's a very deep talking about how to regain focus of the brain through meditation. There's lots of science to it, and then there's lots of unknowns about meditation. And mindset, Carol DeWitt is about growth mindset, fixed mindset. Okay. So anything else? Let's look at the chat and we can go from there. You can privately send me one, or we can answer questions. But thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.